My hope tonight is to give you some really valuable information that it comes from nonviolent communication, attachment theory, and interpersonal neurobiology, which I will name as IPNB, interpersonal neurobiology. I'm videoing this tonight in case it goes well. Put it up for other people to see, and if it doesn't, it's okay. I invite you to take care of yourself tonight, however that works for you. If you need to stretch or get up or leave early, whatever it is, please take care of yourself. Please turn off your cell phone if you haven't already, and that's just because I'm very jealous, and I love actual human attention whenever I can get it. So, if you really need your cell phone on, please leave it on vibrate. All right, so a little bit about me. I've been teaching nonviolent communication for about 12 years now, and I've incorporated attachment theory and IPNB for roughly 5 years, I'd say. I'm really passionate about shadow work. I am a master at relationships. Just kidding. I consider myself a practitioner of relationships, a learner, and my goal is just to get a little better every day. I don't believe there is a right way to do relationships. I'm not an advocate for monogamy or polyamory or open relationships. I do encourage everyone to get lots of support. I like to say it takes a village to raise a relationship. And I think that's how we used to do it, and we used to do it much better because we had lots of support. I also encourage people to take full responsibility for the pain they carry and for the joy that they carry. And I'll talk more about that a little bit later. And just to keep learning and growing. And I don't know if there's such a thing really as mastering relationships, but I'm pretty confident we can keep getting better at it. The neural networks of the brain that are involved in relationship are apparently the most neuroplastic. And so we can keep rewiring our brain for relational excellence for our whole lives. The last thing I want you to know about me is that I'm really afraid to die. And I mean that pretty much in every form of that word, but mostly in the way of my ego dying and my comfort zone dying, my identity, my sense of familiarity. And I'm telling you that partly just because I've gotten a lot of suggestion I should tell people that. I think that I'm just going to trust that's valuable. But also because I think it's a really important piece of successful relationships, is to build a relationship with death and fear. All your emotions. Relationships, in my experience, have called me to die again and again and again in the ego sense of the word. So I'm not suggesting you go out and become extreme kayakers or skydivers. I'm suggesting you keep exploring your edge of your identity and your comfort zone. And do that with all the support you can find. If there's one thing that you take away from tonight, it's that we're not meant to do this alone. I have excellent support in my life, and that's one piece of success for me. I also want to jump in and give you my favorite tool for successful relationships. And it's the phrase, "Can I see if I understand you?" And there's a whole lot of reasons why this is my favorite tool, which I'll get into, but I would like you to actually experience it right now to start. So what I'm going to ask you to do is turn to the person beside you. If you came alone, just join some people. And if you don't want to partake, just witness and pass. And one person's going to take a turn to share something that you love about relationships, whatever that relationship is. Friend, lover, family member. You're going to tell your partner in 2 or 3 sentences something you love about relationships and why. And your partner is going to do their best. They're going to say, when you're done, can I see if I understand you? And they're going to tell you back just as much as they can remember of what they heard. And it's not a test of your listening ability. It's just, I want you to practice my number one tool right off the bat. Does anyone have questions about? And if you forget something, if you're like, I can't quite remember it all, then you just say, what did I miss? And that'll fill you in. So go ahead and turn to the person next to you and share something that you love about relationships. Let's come back together. Please stop connecting. And close your hearts up. So that's a tool that's saved me from quite a few arguments, I'm pretty sure. That's an easy one to use when you're just having a casual conversation. It's a whole other thing to use when someone is blaming you and judging you and threatening and so on. But that's when it's most powerful. The part of the brain that generates fight-flight, the amygdala, generally receives calming by being understood. And I want to be clear that that means actually saying first, can I see if I understand you? And then telling the person what you're understanding. Doesn't mean I hear you or I get you. There's a difference. The saying back what you're hearing, it doesn't just completely release the conflict, but it's a step towards lessening the intensity. From there, you can make some guesses as to the person's needs. So I've handed out need sheets around the room. And if you just share it with the person you're next to, because there wasn't enough for everybody. One of my favorite principles about nonviolent communication is that everything we're doing is an attempt to express a need. Everything we're saying, everything we're doing, it's an attempt to express a need. And when we get heard at the level of needs, also very calming, very connecting. So you can help me right now, because I have a part in me that thinks it's really dangerous to stand in front of a group. And that part feels some level of fear when I'm in front of a group and my heart rate starts picking up. So all of that is telling me about the state of my needs. So what need, you can just look right at the paper, and you don't, this isn't a test, you just guess. Does anyone have a guess? Safety. Generally, when a need lands for me, something shifts and relaxes in my body. Does anyone have another guess?
To be liked.
To be liked, comfort,
Approval.
connection, approval, acceptance.
Emotional safety.
So this is great, and one of the ways that we can calm the nervous system is to have a certain pace of the guessing. Ideally, I get to take in the guess and I see how it lands for me. And maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. It's not your job to be right. It's just your opportunity to help me, or whomever you're with, by making a guess. So yeah, I would say definitely comfort, safety, belonging, acceptance, probably a few others. I have another part of me that loves being in front of groups. In fact, it wants to be a rock star very much. And it gets so excited about being in front of groups. So what needs do you think it wants to meet by being in front of groups? Yeah. Purpose, absolutely. Creativity.
Influence.
Community, influence, expression,
Admiration.
authenticity, yeah. Healing. I come from a whole culture, the Dutch culture, where it's not really cool to stand out. Even though they're tall, you're not supposed to stand out. I remember reading once about a princess or a queen of Holland or something, and she would wear very plain jewelry as part of that ethos of not standing out. And then I got that message from my parents because that's what they were told. So here I am going against the whole culture of my ancestors. And sure enough, now all you're doing is trying to understand me, and I'm not feeling judged, I'm not feeling like you're trying to fix me, you're just understanding. So this is my number one tool for successful relationships. Can I see if I understand you? If you don't have a needs vocabulary, then you just say back what you're hearing. If you have a needs sheet handy, or if you have a needs vocabulary, there's an NVC app, by the way. And it's pretty good. I've checked it out. It's got a whole needs list, and it's got different steps of things.
Oh, which app?
An NVC app. NVC is nonviolent communication. Okay, so thank you for that empathy. In terms of creating successful relationships, there's two main pillars that I start with, and they are differentiation and linking. So I'm going to go like this. This is the one diagram I think I have in my book. Differentiation just means that we all get to be different and unique. We have our own personality, our own needs and feelings, our own dreams and hopes. And we're not responsible for other people's feelings and needs. Linking means that we care about other people's feelings and needs. And we want to create some connection. We want to we want to offer support, we want to receive support. So these are the two main pillars that I try to keep in mind whatever relationship I'm working on. Am I taking up space for me, and am I trying to create connection with somebody else? One of the things I like to use is movement whenever I can, and you can just do this sitting down. So movement that I like for differentiation comes from a practice called uzazu, which I'll write on here later. And it's just like this. It's an out breath. And what this represents for me is good boundaries, taking up my space, knowing who I am, different from who you are. And I sometimes will do this if I'm in a really sticky situation with someone and it's getting confusing. In my head, I'll just do a little bit of this. But you do see people, if you start noticing, when they talk about someone they're fed up with, they'll often go like that. Right? Now that would be an excess of differentiation. You want to have an integrated differentiation where I'm not pushing you away, I'm just taking up my space. And then the linking is like this, an in-breath. And this represents that I'm interested in getting close with whoever, to whatever degree feels right for me. I'm willing to be vulnerable. I want to support this other person's vulnerability. But I'm not responsible. But I care. Curious to know you, and I'm curious to know you, and I really like to be known as well. So these are the two things that are really helpful to keep in mind when you're trying to build a successful relationship. And they're meant to complement each other. A therapist that I work with personally, she says when you really have a strong capacity for differentiation, then you trust yourself to go into deep intimacy with another. And I would say, in my book, I say that the being close with someone else helps me feel more confident to be my full self in the world. So I don't know if there's one that comes first or not. When children are being raised, they start with, very deep linking, hopefully, and from that, they start to venture out into the world and explore who they are and who they want to become. Can I see if I understand you? That's what we call empathy and nonviolent communication. Listening for feelings and needs is really helpful for both. Because one, I'm trying to understand you, I'm trying to get to know you and connect. But I'm also remembering, I'm not responsible. And it's not up to me to get it right. So I don't go, you have a need for trust, I know. Yeah, no, you do. Trust me, you do. I say, do you have a need for trust? And the person says no. It's like, okay, that's not true for them. I'll make another guess. If I have some of my brilliant advice to offer, which I usually do, I try to remember to ask first, would you like to hear my brilliant advice? It could change your life. And it's never as good as I think it's going to be, but sometimes it helps. By the way, I forgot to mention, I'm going to save some time for questions at the end, so if you're sitting there with questions, write them down. If you're lost on anything I'm saying, then just ask me now, because I don't want anybody to be lost. Maybe I'll read a little piece from this thing that almost killed me. This is the hardest thing I've ever done in my life intellectually. I walked away from it when I was done, and this is good timing. I feel about 1.5 years is a good time to be ready to share it with the world more. So how do you create a successful relationship? There are many ways to answer that question. But first, it is important to understand that my definition of a successful relationship is not the happily ever after fantasy version in which the right person makes you happy and complete. Nor is the duration of time spent together the measure of success or failure of a relationship. There are many miserable or stale relationships that last for decades. And there are many people who remain good friends after separating as a couple. I used to think that a successful relationship was one in which things were always easy. I'm not alone in thinking this. Often when I hear others praise their relationships, they delight in describing how easy it is. Today, when I hear that a relationship is easy, I wonder if maybe it's still in the honeymoon stage, and old wounds have not yet begun surfacing. Or maybe the attachment trauma is being avoided and the innate longing to heal and return to wholeness is being buried under a facade of happiness, or under addictions, distractions, and packed-full lives. My definition of a successful relationship includes commitment to and support for healing the attachment trauma that inevitably surfaces, the barriers to love that you have built within yourself, as Rumi wrote. Healing attachment trauma is the foundation of great relationships because it allows you to dismantle your barriers to love and to continue discovering a love that is looking for you, both inside yourself and with a partner or partners. In other words, it allows you to keep falling in love with yourself and your partner even after the honeymoon stage is over. An inspiring relationship is a rich and rewarding relationship where lovers become more and more alive through facing their trauma and fears, and where their creativity, passion, courage, and sense of purpose continue expanding and deepening. This approach to relationship is not easy, but does allow for ongoing romance, love, creativity, and discovery, and far less arguing and fighting. In the end, the most important relationship to succeed at is the one you have with yourself. Whether or not you are in a long-term relationship that is rich and rewarding, the questions to keep asking yourself are, am I healing? Am I growing? Am I being true to myself? Am I following my heart? And am I truly meeting myself in my own hard-to-love places? So welcome to my hard-to-love place right here, sharing my book with you. From interpersonal neurobiology, I'm going to shift now to attachment theory because the two go together so well. So when there is healthy differentiation and linking happening, we call that secure attachment. So there's space for each person to show up as they are and express their needs and their emotions. There's intimacy, emotional support, and getting to know each other, opening up, collaborating. That's secure attachment. Now there was an experiment they did in the 60s or 70s, I don't remember where they, first of all, John Bowlby is credited with beginning attachment theory and studying the styles of bonding between parents and their children. And then his student, Mary Ainsworth, did this experiment called the stranger experiment or something like that. And they wanted to see what happened between a parent and a child in a certain situation in which they brought the parent and child into a room, there was toys, the child's about 1, starts playing with the toys, a stranger comes in to join them, just for an adult to be there, while the parent, I think it was usually a mother, left the room. And then would pretty soon come back in. So when there was secure attachment, the child would get upset when the parent left. When the parent came back, the child would go to the parent and be soothed from its upset. And then it would return to playing. So that child knew that the parent was a source of regulation for its emotions. We're not born with self-regulating neural networks, unfortunately. If you've ever been around infants, you know this, right? A baby, when it has emotions, it goes, "Rah!" And then it needs some caregiver who's resourced and regulated themselves to come over and help calm. The baby doesn't go, "Oh, I'm feeling quite upset. I notice tension in my chest and it feels like anger. I think I have a need for respect." So if it's lucky enough to have a parent that's helping enough, there's no such thing as perfect parenting, but consistent responsiveness, then it starts to develop its own self-regulating neural networks. And that baby grows up to be an adult who doesn't have to cut off from its emotions and doesn't have to be flooded by its emotions. It can feel the emotions and get in touch with the needs underneath. If the parent left the room and came back and the child didn't register much, in other words, the child didn't get very upset when the parent left, and there wasn't a lot of reaction when the parent came back in, that's called avoidant attachment. At 1 year, already that child knows that the linking doesn't include emotional support. So it's already learning to cut off unconsciously, implicitly. It's learning that I'm not going to get my needs met for emotional support, so my brain's going to adjust. And so what I do for that is I kind of pull the circles a little bit apart, because the linking, the emotional linking, is missing. If the parent leaves the room and the child's quite upset and the parent comes back and the child goes to be comforted but is not easily comforted, that's known as ambivalent attachment. And what's happening there is the child has learned that it's okay to have emotions and so on, but that they're with a caregiver or parent who isn't resourced enough themselves to be able to fully help that child calm. And there's other words for it. I like ambivalent. And in this sense, ambivalent means they want it, it's okay to want it, but it's not okay to trust that it'll actually be there, the emotional regulation. So avoidant person, my history meets ambivalent person, very classic pairing. And at first, it's amazing, honeymoon stage. Oh, this is it. This is the one, soulmate. I love you, I love you. You like that too? I like that too. It's amazing. You're so funny, you're so charming, you're beautiful, you're handsome. And then after a while, the avoidant person says, in some ways, oh, this is a lot of intimacy, this is a lot of together time. Oh. And the avoidant person's like, oh, I need, suffocating here. And then the ambivalent's like, oh my goodness, he or she's pulling away. Get back here. And the avoidant's working like, oh no, I'm trapped. There's no good. God. And then, eventually, an ambivalent person gets tired of chasing the avoidant person. Like, screw it. And they start, and then avoidant person, oh my goodness. And then, but mostly ambivalent person is. That's the history of my relationships right there. Except now, I can actually name, oh, wow, I'm getting kind of scared about the amount of intimacy that's happening. It really helped me to have a little bit of space or support, or not every time can I name that, but I'm getting better at it. Because for the avoidant person, that's completely opposite to what feels right. What feels right for the avoidant person is usually to say less, open up less. But I'm working hard to rewire my brain. Ambivalent person needs to work hard to rewire their brain as well, and find the support they need to allow the avoidant person to feel safe to open up. So, there's one more version of attachment. There's one more style of attachments called disorganized. And disorganized is when there's more severe abuse or neglect. And so the child, their neural networks for relationship get very disorganized, and they have a hard time relating to people. And they tend to have stronger addictions and get into more trouble and so on. Most of us, when we get to our most intimate relationships, have one default style. But you can have different styles at different times in your life or with different people. I have some friends here tonight that I feel we're pretty secure in our attachment style. It's not a new label to use to judge people. The reason I am passionate about this is because it has helped me have more compassion for my parents and for myself. Oh, no wonder. It's the drive to shut down or the pull away is so strong. So I write about this and I share it because I want people to have more compassion for themselves and for their partners. Just check how we're doing for time here. Okay, cool. We're coming to the end. I'd like to share a song because one of my passions is music. And oh no, I read that wrong. Okay, we do have more time than I thought, but I still will share time. I have a band called The Next Small Thing, and it's mostly me. And sometimes it's friends who can join me. There used to be a regular actual group of us. Now it's mostly me. And, first that name was a way for me not to take myself too seriously and not stand out too much. But now it's become more of a rallying cry for just doing the next small thing. To open your heart more, to follow your dream, to figure out the conflict that you're in. I've been a pretty big dreamer in my life in different ways, and the older I get, the smaller the dreams get, and the smaller the steps get. And I celebrate more just the small things. This song is called "The Trail of Beloved," and for me, there's an outer beloved, the person that you're falling in love with, and there's an inner beloved. Sometimes I use the word lover, but beloved worked better for the rhythm of the song. And the inner beloved, for me, I'm pretty clear that any relationship I'm going to have with an outer beloved is not going to work if I'm not equally committed to my inner beloved. I have a video blog on the inner beloved, so you can look up that later if you're interested. But basically, it's whatever I need to do to bring out the love that's inside of me, like healing my attachment trauma and doing what brings me alive and those kinds of things. There's a part in the song that talks about sorrow, and for me, grieving is a huge part of healing. We used to do a lot more grieving historically. We used to have rituals for grieving and ceremonies for grieving. And Francis Weller, who specializes in grieving, a therapist in, I think, Washington, he says we're all carrying around a big weight of grief because we have nowhere to put it. We don't have the rituals and ceremonies that we used to have. Oh, I'm going to turn this off, actually, because it won't sound good through the mic. So here's my projection. On the trail of beloved, lost in the thick of it, which way's north? On the trail of beloved, lost in the thick of it, which way's north? I'm scrambling through jungles with eyes closed, searching but don't want to find the beauty that blinds me and burns away all of my perfect lives. Won't you point me in the wrong direction? Oh, the trail of beloved finds me hiding under sunny skies. Yeah, the trail of beloved finds me hiding under sunny skies. This garden needs water and dark soil, roll up sleeves, bend at the knees. I've been saving these seeds to plant among weeds, because the fruit might be too much to bear. Hand me my broken shovel and rusty pan. Hold on, don't give up. There's love in the trees, go there now. Welcome home your weary sorrow. Hold on, don't give up. There's a love in the water, go there now. Welcome home your weary sorrow. Hold on, don't give up. There's love in the heart, go there now. And welcome home your weary sorrow. Hold on, don't give up. There's love in your heart, go there now. And welcome home your deepest treasure. And welcome home your deepest treasure. Oh, the trail of beloved doesn't go where I thought it did. Will you help me learn to love being lost again? Yeah, the trail of beloved doesn't go where I thought it did. Will you help me learn to love being lost again? Ooh, ooh. Okay, so I want to give you another one of my favorite tools, and that is, oh, Mike, yeah, thanks. Microphones, great tools. Maybe I'll just check it. Is anyone lost? Does anyone have any questions of what I've offered so far? Yeah.
So like with the types of theory, we tend to like distinguish between like different types of persons. Like one person will tend to be a way
Yeah, I believe you probably would. Yeah, we have.
Repeat.
Sorry. So the question was, maybe I should check if I got this right. Do we have different attachment styles with different people, and especially depending on how much we feel we love them? Is that the question?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I believe we do have different attachment styles with different people. Generally, though, when we really fall for someone, most of us have a default style that shows up then, and that's the style you had with whoever was your primary caregiver for the first 3 years of your life, generally. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
And the attachment avoidant person wants to be in a relationship, but their fear is being too close to somebody. Is that right?
Yeah. I think we're all afraid of getting too close, to be honest. Some of us just express it in different ways. But the avoidant person expresses it more obviously by pulling away, by I need more space. Sometimes ambivalent is called anxious attachment. I don't like that because I believe the avoidant person is anxious as well. They're just not tuned into their anxiety and they're pretending they're not. And that's part of the avoidant thing, is not to be as aware of your emotions. And then you can, as an avoidant person, start to believe you're actually pretty together. But actually the truth is you're not aware of your different emotions. Any other questions about anything I've offered so far? Yeah.
I'm not sure if it's an appropriate question. I'm kind of nervous to ask it, but I was just wondering if you could touch on hypocrisy. You think that's relevant?
I'm not sure what you're asking exactly. Touch on
Like,
hypocrisy.
I guess in relationships,
If someone's being
hypocritical.
hypocritical? So the question is, if someone's being hypocritical in a relationship,
Sorry.
all I can tell you is probably their amygdala's firing, and they're I don't know how to answer that. But, yeah. Okay. Quickly refer to my notes here. So, there's a really beautiful interview online that my good friend Dave told me about. And it's an interview of the couple who developed imago therapy and wrote a book on imago therapy. It's a very attachment style of therapy as far as I know. I haven't read the book, but I watched the interview. Highly recommend it. This couple's been together for 30 years. And after 15 years, they almost separated, despite the fact that they were couples therapists and developed their own approach and so on. So it's worth it just to see their perspective on things after not separating and staying together another 15 years. And one of the things they realized was how powerful our pain is that we carry, or what I would, in the book I call them our unresolved implicit memories.
Can you tell us the name of the interview?
The name of the interview is Getting the Love You Want. It's on YouTube. Harville Hendricks and Helen LaKelly. And so they realized one of the things they weren't doing well was they weren't working through their conflict very well. They were doing a lot of fighting. And what they realized was they weren't creating the safety that's needed to be vulnerable and to work with the wounding that we carry. They were both therapists, so they were playing the who's right, who's wrong game, who's to blame and all of that. So the therapist that they worked with, so here, one of the extraordinary things that for me about this interview is, again, they were reaching out for help. And as couples therapists writing books and so on, they were reaching out for help. And that help made a huge difference for them. They realized they needed to bring a lot more structure and safety into how they worked through conflict. And a lot of what they describe in the interview sounds fairly similar to an NVC style process. They don't use that word, nonviolent communication, but they talk about making sure they each get heard and so on. One of the ways after doing this work a lot, I find people feel safe when they feel heard. And when you leave out judgment and blame as much as you possibly can. And when your side is acknowledged and validated, if you will. So this to me is foundational. I think we're just starting to realize now with the science that we have and so on, how huge our triggers, what a huge impact our triggers from our childhood play in our adult relationships. And what I mean by attachment trauma, generally all the breaks in connection that happen with our caregivers, the bigger the break, the bigger the pain. But any pain, any break in connection, any traumatic experience, I believe, can be healed with enough empathy and enough support to feel the things that we need to feel. So with enough safety in an adult relationship, it becomes a container for healing. That's the opportunity. Without, it's just a container for, unfortunately, re-traumatizing or, just keeping the same wiring going, basically. In my book, I have different tools at the back that are all about helping to create safety. And what I mean by safety is not generally physical safety, that's a given, but again, places for people to get heard, structure that supports the vulnerability to emerge. There is one actual process that's since the book, so if you're really keen, it's on my website, and it's one of my latest blog posts or tip. It's just a structured process for working through conflict. The important thing is that whoever you're building this with, whether it's a lover, a family member, that you both agree on how, you could start with what I've got on my website and tweak it until you feel good about it. There isn't one magical way. The magic is that you both are buying into this idea that we're going to create a way to make it safe for us to open up. Some people, like for me, for a good part of my life, didn't want to think that that was even necessary. It's like, can't we just leave the past behind? And I tried. Damn, I tried. But implicit memory doesn't allow us. Implicit memory is unconscious memory. It goes in without us knowing that it's going in, and it gets recalled without us knowing that it's being recalled. Unless we have some awareness. Like, I know implicit memory is getting recalled when I'm in front of a group because I can feel it in my body. I'm more aware of my body now. I know I had performance disasters as a child that have come a long way to be integrated, but there's always room for more. I know more and more of my implicit memories that are getting triggered in my intimate relationships. So that's part of the game here, is to start linking, how is this triggering unresolved stuff? And what do I need to feel safe to open up around it? One of the things that people get triggered by or just don't like about nonviolent communication is they think it's a formula. For me, nonviolent communication is about connection. And sometimes the language is an important part of that, sometimes it's not. I'm just always trying to find out what is going to be most connecting. In other words, what's going to be most safe. And so if I'm working with someone and we're trying to work through, I say, how can we make this more connecting? I don't tell them we should use nonviolent communication. I listen to what they think is most safe, and then I say, well, I'd also like to tell you what's most safe for me. Let's work together. if you start to get inspired about nonviolent communication and you go around saying, this is how we have to talk now, I guarantee you will lessen your connection with people. And even worse, you could start judging them for not speaking nonviolent communication and demanding that they give you empathy. So nonviolent communication for me is just what's most connecting, what's going to help connect, what's going to help connect. One of the things we can do, if I reached out for empathy, you guys started making needs guesses for me, that's helping me regulate. But what's really cool is I can do that with my imagination. Before everyone came here and I knew I was going to be nervous, I was imagining some of my friends who are here just behind my back and holding me, at my back. That's called inner co-regulation. And they're just saying, hey, we're with you, and making needs guesses and whatever helps me feel more connected in myself. There is a free NVC practice group in East Vancouver. It's twice a week, or maybe it's by donation or free. So if you're looking for an entry point to go and see what it's all about, it's at Pacifica. If you want more details, just come up after. Yeah.
I have a question. In your book, like in terms of dealing with difficult relationships, especially like family members, and where the other person at this point is not in that, oh yes, we're going to do this together. It's really like, how can I help make this relationship helpful? Are there certain aspects of your book that you think are most helpful, other than the sort of creating the more loving relationship with oneself, but first?
So the question is, if I understand right, if you're having a difficult time with someone in your life and they're not as interested in working on it together, what can you do? What do I have to suggest?
Yeah, are there certain parts or practices?
Yeah.
I mean, the first tool, obviously, and any conversation is like
Yeah, well, that's a good segue into shadow work, actually. But definitely the listening piece. I've had really good success with people who don't want to, they don't like nonviolent communication, they don't want to work through things and so on, by saying, hey, can I just see if I'm getting you here? And doing a lot of listening has made a difference. The shadow, people who we find most challenging in our life are showing us usually, maybe always, the parts of ourselves that we had to cut off from. So because we're mammals and our sense of safety is directly related to how connected we feel with our caregivers, we compromise our authenticity to belong and feel accepted. So for example, I already mentioned in the Dutch culture, it's not, you don't fit in by showing off and being the star. So that part needs to go into the shadow. The shadow is the part where we hide anything that's not acceptable away. We also have golden shadow, which is all the golden parts of ourselves that are also not allowed to, like creativity maybe, or intelligence, or artistic expression, and so on. So a good start when you're having a really hard time with someone is to start listing what are the qualities of this person that are so irritating, or that I just admire so much and I could never be like. And then start taking an honest look at how have you had to put them in the shadow, and why, and how can you start to reconnect with those parts. And if your quality of someone is abusive, obviously you don't want to reclaim abusive, but abusive is on the end of a spectrum of something that's a positive quality in there, like standing up for yourself maybe. So you got to find the quality in the spectrum of abusive that is the thing that you do want. Like show off, is probably not the most connecting thing, but confidence and trusting that I can take up my full space, those are things I would definitely want to reclaim. once you, and reclaiming shadow for me is just like, depending on how deep it is, it's ongoing, difficult work. And I just look at it again as another relationship. I try to listen to those parts and what needs they have and respect them. And if I'm in a relationship with them, they tend to work with me a little bit more. If I'm not, they will work against me and so on. And I'll keep seeing them in that person. That's so difficult. So that's one piece. I know I've reclaimed some shadow when I start seeing that person in a different way. Oh, that person, all of a sudden I see a tender part underneath that's really scared or something like that. Is that clear to you? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I had never heard of the sort of shadow.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it's a sibling where you're just always.
Yeah.
Yeah, trying to figure it out.
People we're closest to are generally really good at showing us our shadow. Yeah. They also will often show us the needs that we're not meeting ourselves. So if you've got a whole list of needs that this person isn't meeting for you, take a good hard look at yourself. Say, am I meeting those needs for myself? Any other questions that are popping up for people? Yeah.
If we have a certain attachment style, like avoidant or ambivalent, is it recommended that we do the opposite, or like say for example, say we're avoidant, would we want to like try to be the opposite from that, like, or is that just like a misguided?
So the question is, if we have an avoidant, for example, we have an avoidance style, is the goal to try and be the opposite of avoidant?
I guess so, yeah, to integrate whatever the other might be.
So one of the diagrams that's used in the attachment world is the circle. And up here is secure attachment. Here is avoidant. This is ambivalent. And just organized down at the bottom. And if you want to have great relationships, I recommend going for secure attachment. It's called earn secure if you have to work your way back to it. Or learned secure, I kind of like it too. So if you ended up out of your childhood with avoidant attachment, your goal is not to be ambivalent, it's to get to secure. And that means that generally people with avoidant, they need to work in the linking realm. They need to get the support to trust that they can be vulnerable again, have emotional expression. You know, one of the things that I celebrate the most in my growth journey is that I have a lot of emotions again. I ended up pretty numb and using a lot of alcohol and drugs to feel things when I was in my 20s. And now I can feel a lot of different things. They're not always things I enjoy feeling, but then I have a good support. So the person with avoidant attachment is working on here, and you could say in general terms, the person with ambivalent attachment is working to have more support, comfort, to be their own person, to trust themselves. And then they get to work towards the earned secure attachment. The person with the disorganized, they get to work towards it too. They generally just need more help. I outline this in more my answer in more detail in my book. I say the person with avoidant is going to grow by getting support for their emotions and learning to be vulnerable, learning to that it's okay to need others. It's a big one for avoidant people. Does that answer your question? All right. Any others? Okay, I'm going to read another little piece from this delightful text here. This is one of my blog posts. So this book has a blend of the theory that I'm telling you about. It's got some of my song lyrics, like the lyrics from that song I sang, and some stories that show up in the blog post. So this is called A Blind Date with My Broken Heart. Oh my, she smells good, fresh and free of baggage. Which is, of course, a fragrance infused with my wishful thinking. But I'll savor it anyway. Several years ago, I decided to take a year off from relationships and dating. Another relationship had ended and had failed to save me from my wounds and from whatever inner work I needed to do to heal those wounds. Not long after that relationship ended, I was meditating in a large circular room when a geyser of emotion erupted from some old pipes in the cellar of my psyche. Anger and sorrow took turns flushing and scrubbing and wringing me out. It seemed like more than just the pain from the loss of a relationship. It felt like the dam holding back a lifetime of relationship pain had burst open. When it was over, an epiphany dropped into my lap. It's time to take a relationship fast. It's time to fall in love with my own broken heart. It's time to commit to myself. I'd certainly had periods of being single before, but I'd never used the time intentionally to learn, heal, grow, and answer the deeper calling of my life's purpose. So with trepidation and determination, I set out to do just that. Leaning against her feels like leaning into heaven. It's all I can do to keep an eye on my heartache and remember my relationship fast. Where did I put my resolve? I moved to Vancouver, British Columbia, and let me tell you, there are some beautiful, vibrant, inspiring, and wonderful women there. I could have adopted all kinds of strategies to avoid connecting with women, but I chose to make friends with women and be upfront about my relationship fast. It was quite a challenge, downright painful and a little crazy-making at times. But it was one of the most important things I've ever done. We hug and my heart aches. The longing swells and ripens like low-hanging fruit, begging to be picked before dropping to the ground. It's a familiar ache that enjoins me to throw caution over the cliff, to cross my fingers, dive in, and hope that a beautiful woman can save me. It's all I can do to turn toward the ache and let it know that we're in this together. You and me, my dear old lonely heartache. Together, we're going to fall to the ground and bruise and rot and compost into something new. My highly uncalculated and unconscious strategy in the past was to fall head over heels in love and plunge into relationships, dreaming of a happily ever after in which the bliss of romance sorts everything out for me. This dream was so strong that I tried the strategy a couple of times even after I became aware of what I was doing. Well, maybe half aware. In hindsight, the tough, deep down, grubby truth is that I was hoping a relationship would take care of me, heal my wounds, open the ground of my being, and replant the self-acceptance and trust that was uprooted many years ago. But I did not realize the extent of my wounds, and I had no idea how to heal them. Unfortunately, because I didn't have the skills and knowledge of taking responsibility for my wounds, I would blame my girlfriends for the pain I felt when those wounds were inevitably opened. Oops. Although it seems obvious now, I didn't think that befriending women I was attracted to while remaining single would bring up so much heartache and inner conflict. It's been a slippery path into an inner world of confused and entangled parts. The past and the present, fear and intuition, love and longing. But it's a change from the confusion and entanglement that happens within relationships. By sticking to my relationship fast and sitting in the discomfort, I can let go of solving anything and just feel and listen and feel. Presence has a way of putting things in their right place. When I sit on the cushion or connect with an empathy buddy and embrace what is arising, the past, fear, and longing sift upwards, and I can see them more clearly and feel them more deeply and give them the embrace they've been waiting for. Grieving. Lots of grieving. It's about time, my heart says, with tender exasperation. Who knew that grief, when fully embraced, opens to so much sweetness, beauty, and creativity? I'd love to tell you that the determination I felt at the beginning of my relationship fast remains strong, but lately I've been bumbling and fumbling and grasping and groping, wavering. My heartache seems always ready for another round. But there's a beautiful shift happening too. The old hope for an ending, for a final breakthrough to whatever I thought I would become, someone who was happy and composed all the time, is dissolving. Certainly, it's not always easy to feel and embrace it all, but there's always something magical and beautiful, exquisite at times, when I don't run away. And wouldn't you know, I'm writing more songs and playing my guitar more often and singing more freely. More and more, I move through a wide and colorful range of emotions rather than living within the confines of fine. An old memory of what it means to be truly alive is slowly surfacing. With longing and fear straining to constrict my throat and tie my tongue, I tell her I'm not available for a relationship. My body relaxes. I can trust myself. I make another date with my broken heart. Thank you very much. It's been a dream come true to celebrate this with you, and if you would like me to sign a copy for you, I'll be right here to do that. And my website is roadtocompassion.com. I will write that on the board for you. And the next small thing, don't forget us. If you want to be on my newsletter for either or both of Road to Compassion or the next small thing, I do play in town, often with 5 Rhythms class, sometimes my own little gigs. You can leave your email here, or you can just sign up at my website, Road to Compassion. I wish you all the best with all of your relationships. Thank you so much.
Thank you.